Hi folks, this is Professor K and it's Introduction to Communication Theory. Here's our textbook and we are working on Chapter 8, which is Uncertainty Reduction Theory. Say that fast 3 times. So Uncertainty Reduction Theory, which is sometimes called URT, maybe you looked at it and you said ERT. It's a pretty straightforward theory. So there's a lot of big words that the text is throwing at you, and maybe as you're reading through this chapter, these words and definitions start to your eyes start to glaze over. But really at the heart of this theory, it's very basic and we all go through it. It is super relatable. So uncertainty reduction theory basically says that when you are in a new interpersonal relationship, and established ones as well, but certainly when you meet someone new, you are nervous, you're uncertain. And you don't know how to act, you don't know how that person is going to act, you don't know what is going to develop out of the conversation or the communication. Of course, this is verbal and nonverbal. And so there's certain strategies that we take to reduce that uncertainty. And basically, the assumptions of URT is people experience uncertainty in interpersonal settings, and it generates cognitive stress. And if you think back to a previous chapter on cognitive dissonance theory, maybe you can find a way to tie these two theories together very nicely. I think you can. So we don't know somebody, we start to get stressed out inside of our cognitions, right? When strangers meet, their primary concern is to reduce uncertainty. So think about the last time you met someone new, either in a class, at your job, maybe you work in retail, a stranger comes up to you and asks you a question. What's the first thing they do? They ask for information, right? And you ask them for information. What are you looking for? What kind of coffee would you like? And these are low-level degrees of uncertainty. If you work at Starbucks and someone asks you for a coffee, sure, that's your job, right? But what about if you're on a first date? There's a lot of uncertainty there. And so what do? You start asking questions of each other, right? Interpersonal communication is a developmental process that occurs through stages. So we've got the entry phase. When we first get together, we first meet, entry, right? What's new. And then we've got the personal phase. So in that phase, we start to share a little more information about each other. We start to lower our levels of uncertainty. So now I know some things about you. I know what to expect from you. And then we have the exit phase. So in interpersonal relationships, we don't become best friends most of the time, right? If you meet somebody for the first time out at a networking function or at a work function or at school function, you chat for a little bit, you start to feel a little bit better about them, and then maybe you are certain that you don't want to continue this relationship. And that's a part of uncertainty reduction as well. The quantity and nature of information that people share changes over time. And then, again, that's when you actually think about it, it's like, of course, that's a no-brainer. The things and information that I share with the person that I'm on a first date with is very superficial, right? And them too. It's very rare that you're on a first date with somebody and they're like, here's my life story about my parents and how they treated me and how that's manifested. And we don't have conversations like that at first. At first we talk about the weather or we talk about movies that we like, and even that, right? So if you say, I love the new Avengers movie, which doesn't even exist right now, and the person says, ooh, the Avengers movie, I don't like superhero movies. Well, you have some uncertainty, right? And it hasn't been reduced. Well, I don't know if we're going to get along, right? But let me keep asking, okay, you don't like superhero movies, but do you like to read Harry Potter books? Because I like to read Harry Potter books, and then maybe we'll find some commonality there. Very general, basic stuff. It's possible to predict people's behavior in a law-like fashion, and this is kind of interesting. Recalling from Chapter 3, theorists have some guidelines to help them in the job of theory construction. One of the guidelines we reviewed was covering law, which assumes that human behavior is regulated by generalized principles. So as I just detailed some of these ways that we get to know each other and we don't get to know each other, basically I've given you some formulas, right? And those formulas are, I mean, we can think about as laws. They're predictable. It's predictable that when we meet for the first time, we are going to have very basic, superficial conversations. And when we don't, that's a violation, right? If we go back to EVT, we'd say, that's a violation of what I assumed you would act like on a first date. I figured we would have these superficial conversations because it's rule-based how our initial entry phase communication happens. Is that clear? Okay, so there's also these axioms, and this is where maybe that got a little confusing. Axioms are basically just truisms. So they've done a lot of research on uncertainty reduction theory, and they've come up with a lot of the same concepts over and over and over again. And these are these axioms, these truisms. So I will just go over a few of them. Given the high level of uncertainty, this is axiom number 1. The high level of uncertainty present at the onset of the entry phase, as the amount of verbal communication between strangers increases, the level of uncertainty for each interaction in the relationship decreases. And that's basic sense, right? The more we talk, the less uncertain I feel. And interesting about these axioms is oftentimes you could plot them out, right? And they have either negative or positive relationships. So the more that we talk, the lower the levels of uncertainty, right? So you could, if you looked at it on sort of a graph, you could see it going down, right? That's a negative relationship. If it went, the more we talked, the more uncertain we feel, that would be a positive relationship that would be going up. But that's not the case with this axiom. Here's another axiom. As nonverbal affiliative expressiveness increases, uncertainty level decreases. So what do I mean by that? Well, think about that first date. When I first meet you, do I touch you on your arm, your hand? Not at first. Maybe after we talk for a little while and we start to get comfortable with each other, maybe on the second date, you're allowed to give somebody a hug. I don't know. I haven't dated in a while. I don't know the rules of dating anymore. But you understand where I'm going with this. On the very first interaction with somebody, we don't usually touch them. We don't usually feel like we can just put our hands on their shoulder, things like that. But as we get to know them, uncertainty increases. Oh, I'm allowed to hold your hand. Or, oh, I'm allowed to put my arm around you. Or, oh, I'm allowed to now kiss you on the cheek, or whatever the case may be. And again, these are truisms, and they're pretty common. And in the book, it has these this great table of axioms, and you can see how verbal communication goes up, nonverbal affiliative expressions go up, right? So the more we talk, the more I feel like I can express myself nonverbally around you through whatever the case may be, touching or holding hands. Another one I'll just pull out. As nonverbal affiliative expressiveness goes up, so as I feel more comfortable with my nonverbals and expressing myself nonverbally with you, there's actually a negative in information seeking, right? So why would that be? Well, the more I feel comfortable touching you and blah, 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 I don't have to say, hey, is it okay that we hold hands now? But think about some of those rom-com, romantic comedy movies. There's always that scene where the guy says, let's just kiss and get it out of the way now, right? That's information seeking. But the more that we get to know each other, the more that we become comfortable, I don't have to feel like I gotta ask you, is it okay if I hold your hand now? Are we boyfriend and girlfriend? You don't do that anymore, right? Because I know you better. My nonverbals are expressed that way. So that's this chart. So I encourage you to look through this chart and sort of plot it out for yourself. Think about some of these things. When information seeking goes up, there's a positive relationship between reciprocity. So reciprocity is the idea that we share information. It's back and forth, right? So as I share more information, there's a positive relationship. I expect you to share more information with me, because that's how you build a relationship. If I keep telling you and you're not telling me anything back about yourself, I'm just going to lose interest in you, or I'm going to feel less comfortable. Maybe I'm going to become uncertain, right? Hey, why is this person not sharing information with me, right? And then I'm going to stop my sharing of information. And you can start to see how you can plot that out as well. There's also these strategies, and I asked you to think about strategies let's use social media, because I think social media is really interesting in terms of strategies for lowering uncertainty. So what happens, what's the first thing that happens when someone Facebook friends you that you don't know who they are? What's the first thing you do? Click, what's your Facebook page? Or Instagram follows you. What's your Instagram page? Let me check you out. That's a passive strategy. So I'm just looking around, seeing what I can find out about you. Then the other strategy that I might use is an active strategy. So what's an active strategy? I'm actually going to do something. So if I see you Facebook friend me and you have, we have 20 friends in common. Let me think about those friends. Let me ask my friend, do I know this person? I get emails all the time from my friends saying, why do I know this person? Who is this person that you know? They just Facebook friended me, right? We do that a lot. Or this person Instagram followed you. Let me go see who their followers are. Oh, you find that your friend follows them. Let me ask my friend. That's active, right? Interactive strategy. So what's the most get to the bottom line of a Facebook friend request? Hey, friend requester, who are you? Do I know you? Did I meet you the other night at the bar and I don't remember? Because that could happen to some of us, not me, of course. But that's an interactive strategy, actually going and reducing uncertainty by having a communication with that person. The book gets into some intercultural, and I really don't need you to focus on that too much. I just want to make sure that this theory makes sense to you. It's a pretty straightforward theory. We do it all the time, every day, and it is how we manage and at times coordinate meanings and make symbols out of the communication that we have by asking information, by information seeking strategies, right? So hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions, let me know.